Gary, Penn, carrots, cupcakes, and coffee. Gary, Penn, carrots, cupcakes, and coffee.
If you're not happy right now, that's your fault. Ugh. We've been sitting in chairs for 2 hours and we're supposed to be happy right now? It's a strong statement. I'm going to repeat it. If you're not happy right now, that's your fault. 10 years ago, I was anything but happy. I was in the midst of a divorce. I didn't like my life. I didn't like where I lived. I didn't like my job. Certainly, I didn't like my ex-wife. I would do just about anything to get away from myself. Luckily, a lot of that involved escaping out to exercise. I was doing a lot of yoga, 5-6 days a week. On the weekends, I would go to workshops for 2-3 hours at a time. I was an addict, but at least it was good for me. There was one particular workshop that I remember very clearly. It was taught by a guru out of the Bay Area named Rusty Wells. Rusty had an interesting way of conducting his workshops. It was a bit unusual. He would start you into the poses, and the practitioners would be along for the ride. There was chanting. There was singing involved. And then, well, at the crescendo of the workshop, he'd have you in some type of awkward pose. And you figured it can't really get any harder than it is right now. And he adds something on top and then says to you, if you're not happy right now, that's your fault. That's my fault? Ah! That's my fault. Rusty awakened something inside me. That is my fault. I had a choice. I could choose to be happy. I decided to go to the library, do some research from people that knew a lot more than I did. And I came upon some books on tape from another guru. His name's Wayne Dyer. He's a self-help kind of guy. I didn't think much of Wayne's tapes at the beginning. I was commuting to and from work, up and down the 405. How happy can you really be? But I remember one quote. Everything you need, you already have. You are a whole, complete person. You are not an apprentice person on the way to someplace else. And for the weeks that had passed since Rusty's workshop, I had been thinking, well, it's my fault, but what do I do about it? And I realized, I opened my eyes. I'll ask you, in the last week, how many of you have a moment that stands out as memorable, as outstanding? I'll give you 5 seconds. Most of you maybe came up with a handful as your answer. My daughter had her 3rd birthday party. I got an award at work. And for many of you, the answer was 0. But I will humbly suggest that perhaps all of those answers are wrong. Perhaps the answer is all the memories, all the time, was special, was memorable, was extraordinary. But we weren't opening our eyes. A man approached the Buddha many thousands of years ago. He noticed that the Buddha had clearly been enlightened, but he didn't understand how that wisdom could possibly come about in a human. And he approached him and said, "Please, sir, are you a god?"
No.
The man was even more flustered than when he started. He walked for hours. He tried to clear his mind. He prayed upon the matter. He came back to the Buddha and he said, "Are you an angel then?" No. The man was absolutely infuriated at himself. He did not know what the answer could possibly be. He hiked and went without water or food for 3 days. Came back to the Buddha and finally said, "Oh, what are you then?" "I am awake." Now, it's not that easy to always be awake. If I was always awake, you'd call me the Gary. But I'm not the Gary, I'm just Gary. I mostly think about things that you think about. I'm driving along and I'm thinking I need to pick up carrots, cupcakes, and coffee. I better not forget any of them. I'm not thinking that I should always be present. But if the thought lingers even for a moment, well, we can be more present than we were before. We can smile for that moment. We can open our hearts for that moment, and maybe that passes on to the next person you encounter. Because, yes, if you're not happy, that is your fault, but that can change in an instant. So when you leave here tonight, open your heart, smile, think positive things, clear out the grocery list, and for a moment, understand that, yes, life is extraordinary.